All right, we are recording. Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Mark Takata. I am the Adobe ColdFusion Technical Evangelist. Thank you for joining me on this somewhat cold, depending where you are in the world, although I feel like it's kind of cold everywhere right now. Kind of cold, chilly, foggy here morning or evening, I guess, if you're in Malaysia, as at least one person here is. Today, we're going to be talking about building native mobile apps using a framework called Monica IO. And this is a really, really cool framework. It's something that some of you will actually recognize and be familiar with when I start diving into it. It just has a different name than it once did before. So just a few little things, little bit of housekeeping. As I said, my name is Mark Takata. I have all my contact information at the end of this. I'm the technical evangelist for ColdFusion, going on about 2 years now, having a great time. And I wanted to let you know about some things that are happening in the ColdFusion world right now. We currently are kind of coming to a slow roll on Alpha 1 testing of Adobe ColdFusion Fortuna, which is the next version of ColdFusion coming out in the first half of next year, probably to be renamed ColdFusion 2023. Has lots of really cool features, cool new stuff. I have a talk in the YouTube channel that you can see to my right about that called Road to Fortuna, which kind of talks about some of the really cool features that are going to be coming out. If you are currently an alpha tester, thank you. Appreciate you. If you are not an alpha tester and are interested in doing that for us, going in, testing some of the new features that are coming out, and most important, giving us feedback, telling us how you like it, how you don't like it, what could be changed, posting bugs, please email me. My email is going to be at the very end of this talk. But we still have some slots open if you are interested in doing that. We definitely need people to help test something called GCP, which is the Google Cloud Platform. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk about what Monica IO actually is. So first of all, it's not CF Mobile, okay? CF Mobile was an idea that was developed many years ago with the thought that because ColdFusion had like a Java backend, there was the possibility to perhaps be able to do mobile development. Hey, what's up? To do mobile development inside of ColdFusion and then somehow magically ship that, to the store and then have the other half on the server and do all that. Well, that never really worked out, unfortunately. Part of why that didn't work out was that we were in some ways crutching on a technology called PhoneGap. Okay. PhoneGap was a project that was kind of bought by Adobe that used the Apache Cordova framework and language set and infrastructure to create these hybridized apps. So basically apps that you could code in HTML, JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. And then you could use the Cordova to kind of tie that in, to put your native hooks into, like, accelerometer, phone, camera, whatever, right? And that was pretty good. I mean, it was going well. We actually built this amazing tool called, oh gosh, what was it? PhoneGap Online or something like that. And it allowed you to actually like build your stuff for iOS in the cloud. You didn't need a Mac, and that was huge and awesome and super fun. So I used that a lot. I built tons of apps in there. I've got like I think one or two apps in the App Store still. Maybe I don't know. It was for another company, so I don't know if they've maintained it or not. But I used that a lot, and it was great. I loved it. And then a bunch of stuff happened, like Apple didn't like the way that we were doing previews in the phone. They felt that we were we were getting around some safety stuff. And when I say we, I meant the PhoneGap technology that we were using to do previews. And unfortunately, at that point, the team had either moved on or there really weren't people there. And someone somewhere made the decision to essentially sunset the product. And I was upset. And of course, there's other things out there that I could have moved over to. I mean, React Native, I guess if you do React, I mean, that's a good choice, right? But I don't necessarily do it in anger very often. I certainly have not kept up with stuff. I'm like a pre-hooks React guy, so that tells you how long it's been since I've really been serious in that ecosystem. Ionic is another potential thing, and actually Ionic is really, really good. We had a person from Ionic do a talk at Developer Week last year. So that's also a really good possibility, but yeah, none of those have that ease of use that PhoneGap really did. So along comes Monica.io. So who is like, what is it? What's Monica.io? Well, I was apparently not the only person who loved PhoneGap. There were lots of people that really love PhoneGap, and there was a group in, I think, the Philippines who that was their whole shtick. They did PhoneGap based apps. They loved it. They were super, super involved in making plugins in the community. They did support. They did all this stuff, and then PhoneGap went poof. It died, and they were very upset for a while. And then at one point they said, well, wait a minute. Adobe has not had a lot of effort put towards PhoneGap in many years at this point. We can do this as well as they can. Like Cordova's open source. We can totally do our own thing. And that's what they did. So they used their background, their knowledge, their experience in PhoneGap and with Cordova, and they, over a few years, built Monica.io. And it is essentially a rebirth of PhoneGap, but better. And me saying that is a pretty big deal because I loved PhoneGap. It was great. It was one of my favorites. So what did they do? Like, how did it work out? Well, they really leaned into this idea that most people who are doing this hybrid development type of methodology, they don't have Macs necessarily, right? And even if they have Macs and they want to, program for iOS, well, they probably don't want to, then install Eclipse and drop all this nonsense in to actually render out APKs for Android. So what do? They built an online-based cloud development platform with a cloud-based IDE. And it has debugging, and it has testing, and it's all up in the cloud. Because, when PhoneGap was around, it was a while back. Like, the level of cloud architecture and the low cost that were associated with that did not exist back then. Like, yeah, you could put a cloud site up, but it was not, 9 cents a day or whatever it is now. And you can build your stuff using their platform in the cloud and get back the pieces that you need to put into the various stores. But wait, there's more. On top of that, they figured, well, while we're doing this, let's integrate with modern software development life cycles. Let's integrate with CI/CD pipelines. And so all of that is part of their online tool and product that you can buy. Oh yeah, it's not free. So to be fair, PhoneGap was also not free for a lot of people that weren't part of Adobe CC, but I was, and so it was free for me. So this was a little bit of an interesting thing, that you actually do have to pay monthly for it. And here's where it gets weird. So up there, you see it says $22 a month to get 10 projects, unlimited builds, cloud IDE, custom plugins. There is a free version, very, very limited. You can have 3 projects. It's not a lot. It's enough to get you started, right? 3 builds in 24 hours. Your IDE is not as good. You have access to all the CI/CD and all that other stuff. That $22 though is important because it's not $22. It is whatever the exchange rate happens to be between the Japanese yen and wherever you are. So if you're in Japan, it's whatever that cost is. But elsewhere, it changes because this group packed up and moved their whole operation over to Japan. And that's where they're hosted now. That's where they're from. And when you pay, you end up paying whatever the translated amount is to Japanese yen, which is potentially a problem. Okay, so I want to just be upfront with this. If you work for a government agency in the United States or military, which a lot of ColdFusion developers are in one of those two places, or even a university potentially, Monica.io is not a US-based company. You're shipping your stuff off to be in the cloud somewhere in Asia. And I mean, I'm fine with it. I have no issues with it. But your business may, your government institution may. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about this. Don't get too excited, because that could potentially be something that might get in your way. I mean, I hope it isn't, but it might. So let's talk a little bit about like what are you actually doing when you're going to be doing this development, and I'll drop into the actual code later and kind of show you the ins and outs and how these things actually work and what's going on. But let's talk a little bit, if you haven't used PhoneGap, which a fair number of people have not. What is it like? How do you create an app versus the traditional way? So the traditional way is what's known as native mobile development, meaning you are programming in the language of the platform that you're going to be pushing it out to. In iOS, for a very long time, that was Objective-C, which is objectively awful. Hey, sorry, rim shot. Or Swift, which is an awesome language. If you're going to Android, you are going to be working, generally speaking, in Java. Now, I'm not talking about here with like the React Native Ionic stuff. Like that's something different. We'll get to that. So this is actually doing the native programming in the language that's on the the tablet, the phone, whatever it is. So what are the benefits of that? Well, you're coding in the thing that's like directly talking to the hardware. It's extremely efficient. It's very fast. In the past, you had lots and lots and lots of access to the hardware, which is super good, right? That is no longer necessarily an advantage. Like we have figured out, like they've opened up those hooks to other to other languages that could run on them, and so we can do things like we can use the phone camera, we can use the phone's inertial whatchamadigi, to move it around, right? So that's no longer a big deal. The downside, though, is when you program in Objective-C, guess how many platforms you get to go on? Uno, just the one. You get to put it onto iPhones. Your boss says, great, where's the Android platform? You got to recode it. You got to put it into something else. So it's write once, run once. Very, very painful. The difference when you're moving into one of these, what's called like hybrid or HTML5 style development, is you will write your stuff once, and the framework that it's sitting on top of will do all the transpiling that needs to go to all of the multiple platforms that are out there. No potential spam. I don't want a phone call. It's not one of you. And that includes Windows Phone, by the way. Some of these platforms still will output to a Windows Phone, which is borderline hilarious. What isn't hilarious is because they were able to go onto phones, it can do things like you can push into Electron, which will build an app that will run on a desktop on a Windows machine. Pretty darn cool. You could write once and have something that runs on iPhones, on all the Android devices, on I think there's some platforms that will output to Mac, and like Windows Desktop, and also progressive web apps, which are really, really cool. Kind of hard to do out of the box, kind of on your own if you don't know what you're doing. But they are pervasive and they are everywhere right now. Anybody here use VS Code? Guess what? You're using a progressive web app. That is the background and underlying technology for VS Code. Yeah, a lot of Microsoft products are now using basically progressive web apps behind the scenes to run them because, hey, it makes moving to all the different platforms easy peasy lemon squeezy instead of difficult, lemon difficult. What do you lose when going to something like HTML5? Not a lot, actually. Performance, potentially. There are some issues potentially with doing that translation across the hooks that are going into the phone. So if you are writing an extremely high performance requirement application, right? Like, I don't know, maybe something that's doing like live AI changing of recording that's coming out of the camera. I don't know. You guys are way better at this than I am. Whatever that cool thing is, this might not be the thing that you want because you're not going to have that like really raw like ground feel. Like it's the difference between a really good sports car and a literal race car, right? You don't want to drive the race car to go get groceries, I think. Maybe you do. I don't know. But if you want to race it, yeah, you better use the race car. Don't use your awesome, I don't know, Aventador or whatever you guys all drive. I drive a Subaru. Okay, so let's take a look here and see what we're talking about when we're talking about the actual code. And we'll this is like, well, not actual. This is like a screenshot of actual code. So what is this? This is actually Swift. So I said earlier that Objective-C is objectively awful, and I stand by that. Anybody who thinks Objective-C is a great language probably needs to be talked to and helped out. It is very fast, but good Lord, it is awful. Swift, on the other hand, is awesome. It is a great language, and I highly recommend people learn it just to see what a really well-written modern language looks like. Don't do Rust. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Rust guy, put down the shovels, Rust guys. So what are we having here? So this is basically something that's going to put a button up on your screen, and when you click the button, it's going to write "Welcome to Swift World" onto your screen. Essentially, this is a hello world with a little bit of fancy schmancy stuff, right? In Swift. It's a little complicated, right? Like, I mean, you know, it's anybody who's a programmer kind of sees it, right? We've got some lets, right? So we're going in, we're actually setting, we're instantiating some variables, right? We're setting them to be values, some that are, you know, hard-coded strings, some that are variables, and there's an action, and there's a write to screen, essentially, right? Okay, and there's an import, right? So anybody who has done like kind of feels like Python, it kind of feels like JavaScript, and that's really on purpose. Like the people who wrote Swift, which is an Apple designed language that's fairly modern, looked at some of the best capabilities of modern languages, or of all languages, and incorporated them into Swift, and it's pretty good. What would that same thing look like um, in HTML5 or something similar? Well, it's a lot more code, but as you and I all know, more code, less code, that doesn't actually matter. It's what the code difficulty and complexity and all that is. And the moment you look at this, you're like, that's a web page, Mark. It's literally a web page. You've got a doc type, HTML, the head. The head's got a few things in there. Content security policy. Oh, device width. Oh, you're going onto a phone. Okay, right? Style sheets. We all know how to link style sheets, right? We do it every day. And a little bit of including some JavaScript in there. And there's an external JavaScript that might do a couple things here. And then we've just got some divs and text and buttons, right? So this is something that's extremely familiar to everyone here, I'm pretty sure. The Swift code is not. And that is the difference between being someone like all of you who are ColdFusion developers, probably some JavaScript developers. We all know HTML. We know probably some CSS, maybe some more than others. And trying to then get into mobile development, right? You immediately hit a wall when you try to go native. Because we're not familiar with it. It's something new. It's something complex. It's more difficult for you to kind of get a handle on. When you go into the hybrid or HTML5 style stuff, for the most part, it's something that's kind of familiar. but there's gotchas. You are working in a slightly different place, right? You're in your boat, but you're on a river, not the ocean. Like, yeah, it's kind of familiar, but also there's other dangers you have to watch for. Okay, so that's the PowerPoint deck. Let's take a look at Monica.io. We're going to look at the actual, what are we talking about? What do we get when we sign up for Monica? So, and I'm going to show you a couple of different things here. So what you're seeing there is you are seeing the desktop version of the Monica.io application. So this is their main website. Okay. I'm just going to log in. And you'll notice I sign in with GitHub. And that's on purpose. So they allow you to sign in with your GitHub account because they want you to link your GitHub through your workflow. That's a modern software development lifecycle. They want to support that out of the box, and they do. So yeah, so if you look at these two, they look identical, right? That's kind of the point. So you can use this on a desktop, I think on Windows and Mac. They might have a Linux version, or you don't have to do any of that. You can code this on a Chromebook if you want. Yeah, you can do mobile development on Chromebook. How about that? Because it's all online. Oh, hey, Charlie. Yeah, PM. I think PM took off. Did PM take off? Oh no, PM's here. Never mind. So, okay. So let's take a look and see what we're having here. So there's a few things that I've created that we'll go over, but let's start a new project and take a look and see what you get. So when you create a new project in Monica, essentially what it's going to give you on the back end is all of the Cordova stuff, kind of the background basics that you need when you create something like a blank canvas, right? There's also framework templates. If some of you are like, oh, well, I know Vue. I want to use Vue, or I want to use React. You can totally do that. There's framework templates for Angular, React, and Vue. Or there's just a framework template that uses regular old ES6, vanilla JavaScript. Or, and this is the fun thing, they've got some sample apps. And these are a great way for you to get a sense and figure out exactly what's kind of happening behind the scenes. So I'm going to pull up one of these and maybe go through it a little bit. So let's do the jQuery to do, because I think a lot of people know jQuery. They're pretty familiar with it. And I got no hate for jQuery. I'll use it all day long. I usually use HTMX, but I have jQuery in there too. Why not? Put it all in there. Let's do that. I'm just gonna remind myself to delete this later. I'm gonna create the project. All right. So now I've got this project here. I'm gonna open it up. There you go. So now you've got all of this information here. We're gonna open this up in the Cloud IDE in a minute, but here's some of the other stuff that you have in here. You can use a command line locally to do development inside of Monica.io on your machine, because a lot of folks who are JavaScript developers are used to just doing everything in the CLI. And again, these guys really want to support that. They want to go where you are and allow you to do what you do in the place that you're at. So I don't necessarily do that all that often. I mean, here and there, it kind of depends what mood I'm in, how much coffee I've had. There is a desktop app that you can grab from here. They call it Local Kit for some weird reason. And I do have that running. But again, it's the same thing. And that's the point. Like it runs the same online as it does locally. what's all this stuff? Hey, look at this. So now if you want to do some builds, you could do an Android build, an iOS build, or Windows build. And this Windows build is not what you would think it is. So it is not being built for Windows Phone. It used to be. That used to be what that button did in PhoneGap. This will actually build an Electron app for you to use on your desktop. Pretty cool. And here's all the configurations that you need to set up. So basically, you would go through here and you would set up, how you want your icons, the names, things like that. So there is a bit, obviously there's still a little bit of work. But it's all this is stuff we know. Like, this is not that hard to figure out. AE asks, by the way, there was a question. Can we just create a WebView based app, like just load my responsive web app into WebView and then compile and generate all versions? Yes and no. And I'll explain that in a little bit, AE, but that's actually kind of what we're going to be doing, and that's the awesome part of this. That's why this is so powerful and awesome. Let me just kind of get through a few more of these. So deployment, you can set up a deployment service. You can create a continuous integration. I have a bug in my setup, by the way, which I just haven't bothered to deal with it because I'm not actually like pushing out like real stuff through continuous deployment in here. This wants me to connect my account. My account's already connected. I logged in using GitHub. So I just need to set that up. This should actually allow me to manage my my CI/CD pipeline and run through my GitHub and do like pipelines or whatever. For whatever reason, it's not working for me, and I just haven't bothered to deal with it. And here's some cool stuff. So like deleting projects, archiving them. You can duplicate a project that you've got in case you just want to base something. You have a base template and you just want to kind of riff off that. Cool. Okay. So let's jump into the Cloud IDE and take a look and see what we've got here. So here we go. Pretty darn cool. As I said before, this looks real familiar, right? You've got your HTML, you got your head, right? You're doing link rels. And by the way, all of these links are local, right? People have asked me, well, what if I want to import, I don't know, from a CDN? And I would say, be careful, because you're on a phone. You want to make sure that if the person's using your app, especially if an offline mode, that whatever that CDN is not like making your app unusable if you don't have access to it or it's slow. But you could totally do it. And I'll be doing it in some of my code later because YOLO, I don't know. I'm just out here to play and party. Okay, so we've got the code on the center here. On the left, we've got the file system that is up in the cloud that has all of the files that are making this whole thing tick. And if I just double click on them, you can see we've got stuff for adding pictures and adding a to-do. Now, very clearly, just to make sure that you understand, like, so I'm going to go ahead and preview this test to-do, I don't know, paint my house. I really need to paint my house. Let's say save. Okay, that added a to-do. Where did it add it? It just added it into memory. Like, it just put it into the to-do apps memory inside of the fake phone here. It's just this is just a demo of what it's going. It didn't go to a database. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's kind of the difference here. For AE, like, oh wait, AE asks, it has set up for cached web pages to work as a local app while there is no internet connection. For example, cache DB content on user device. So just out of the box, no. But you can do that. You can use. Most phones have a local DB. And so, yes, you can do some caching and all that. Double check that URL. Oh, is that for Charlie? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, anyway. I mean, is my is it my link or Charlie's link? Hold on. I'm gonna check. No, my link works. All right. Anyway, so yeah, yeah. So basically what you're doing here, what I'm going to be showing you is the phone has access, the phone is not offline, it's not cached or whatever. But there's technologies and stuff that you can use that will do like local caching of information, local database storage, all of that stuff. That is, and Cordova has some plugins that can work with that. It's a little out of scope for what we're talking about here. We're just kind of talking about an app that has internet access, and for the most part, a lot of people kind of have internet access all the time on their phones, especially if they're like using stuff. Like you're not going to jump on Facebook without an internet connection, right? Or check your, you might check your email that's already come in, but you obviously can't send an email. So for the most part, that's kind of what we're looking at. So back to here, you can kind of see. And oh yeah, and I should also point out on the right side is the preview. This is sort of the test, the demo, where all the stuff is happening, right? And that is, and it's not very clear, unfortunately, where this is, but the app kind of starts in this corner and is where my mouse is circling. I think hopefully you can see my mouse. So like this to do app header, that's here. That's where that code is, right? And then um, the add to do is here, and then all the body stuff is in there. So anyway, this is it's all CSS and whatever. We know all that. Okay, so that's how you would set up something that's totally local. Maybe not that useful unless I mean, you could build a game that just sits in memory and plays. But then you'd want to save the high score maybe, right? Or have them log in or have an account. How would you do that? Okay. So now I'm going to jump into something a little bit different. And we're going to talk about, let's hop in here and find my code. Yes, here we go. Okay. So real quick, I want to talk about there's a technology that I use a lot that works really, really well with ColdFusion. It's called HTMX. What is HTMX? Well, if you've been to any of my talks in the past about JavaScript, you've probably heard me, wax emphatically about how awesome this is. But essentially, what HTMX does, it's a super, super lightweight framework that lets you assign verbs to any object in the DOM. I know. Was that even English, Mark? What do you mean by that? What I mean by that is when you click an href, you're actually sending a verb. You're sending a get verb to go and get the contents of a link and return it back. And it's going to get returned back to the entirety of your page. You're doing a full page refresh on the entire body object, or maybe even the HTML node inside of your DOM. Cool, right? But the original intent for HTML was to allow that type of thing to happen on anything. That was the original idea. It's hypertext markup language. Hyper. They want everything to have the ability to do that. And they kind of stopped. They never quite got there because, hey, it really worked pretty well. Like form buttons, they can send a get, they can send a post, right? You can change that inside the form field. And that was really all that people needed for a really long time. The guy who created HTMX, Carson Gross, said, let's keep going. Let's give the ability to add verbs to literally anything, and also then allow them to get returned into any other node in the DOM. And while that sounds kind of like, that's like an elevator pitch, right? I just told you that in 20 seconds, 15 seconds. the power that you get out of that is absolutely wild. So let me show you what I mean by all that blah, 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 blah stuff here. So here we are. We've got our main page. Notice it's an HTML page, right? This is because ColdFusion does not run on your phone yet. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten it running on the phone. If you have, call me. But you're just going to be running your normal HTML stuff on your actual phone. The data that you're going to be getting is going to have to come from a server somewhere. And we'll get to that. So looking through what's in the head, some pretty simple stuff. We've got a loader component in CSS. We've got some styles, right? And the styles are like nothing here that's scary, padding, margin, right? Things that everybody who's done any HTML or CSS are familiar with, right? I'm not sure. This actually, I think, came from another. I don't really need this. Probably that came from. I think I used one of the demos and just put stuff in here, so I could probably get rid of that. In fact, I'm going to, just so we're not confusing things. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then we've got this line right here. And what that does is that goes and grabs the 1.8.0 version of HTMX off of a remote server and plops it in and lets us use it. So here's an example of using a CDN-based, using unpackage.com, a CDN-based loader for something that goes into your phone. Now, as AE had asked earlier, like what happens if you don't have internet, right? Well, this doesn't work. So that's this particular code that I'm doing right now, right here, would not work. But I'm pulling the information that you're seeing on the right-hand side there from a database that's online somewhere. So that would work. So anyway, could you put this somewhere locally and load it? Yeah. Should you? Probably. That's one less thing to load when this thing loads up. So you want to be as effective as possible. Okay, let's hit the body. My goodness, another spam message. I am so popular. Here's the first place that we're seeing something kind of odd. What is this? What in the world is HX trigger? Okay, so if anytime you see HX dash, say that 5 times fast, that is an HTMX attribute, essentially. And what this is saying to the body element in which it is inside of, it's saying, I want you to trigger an action, and we'll describe the action here in a second, on load of this DOM element. So the first time this page loads, I want you to do whatever I'm going to tell you in a second. And then I want you to target this DOM element. And that's right here. So this div here is my viewport. This is what I'm using to display my pages. So for most of you, you are immediately recognizing this is a SPA. This is a single page application. I am not reloading the UI or anything like that. I am literally just replacing pieces asynchronously throughout. Yes, exactly. There's no reloading. There's no page changing here. Could you do that? Totally. Yeah. Links work just fine inside of Monica, inside of Cordova. You can go page to page if you wanted to, but why would you when you could do it this way? And then what is the action that I'm going to be triggering on the body to put into this viewport? Well, I'm going to go to tacadatech.com, my website, my server. So this is running in the cloud. And I'm going to pull back the contents of sessions.cfm. CFM page. Cool. What is in that page? This is what's in that page. So what's going to happen is when that page loads, it's going to go and it's going to make an asynchronous call using Ajax behind the scenes. Notice I haven't written a single line of JavaScript here, by the way. Very big point here. It's going to go back. It's going to load all of this. Hopefully you can see that. Actually, hold on. There we go. It's going to hit that CF query there at the top. And what is that doing? It's going and grabbing session day, session name, UTC time, speakers from a table. So that data source is also in the web. This is a MySQL. So we can create an API and cloud-based already existent data set and make calls like you're doing. Yes, correct. So all of this would also work if you're using get.json, an Ajax call, an asynchronous call, anything like that would work. Like if it's JavaScript that's going out and getting data from somewhere, it will 100% work in this. And then display. I just like to use this because this lets me server-side render all of my content. I don't have to like bring it to the phone, bind it, and then do a bunch of for eaches to load the stuff for the most part. I mean, I am actually doing that sort of here a little bit, but so yeah, so what happens here? So this goes through and I actually output the session data that I got from my MySQL database there at the top, and I output it into a list here. Now, this looks a little more complicated probably than, you know, most folks are used to. They're like, what the heck? What's all this like weird script in the middle of it? This is Mark being lazy and not writing the function. This should probably be a function, but what I'm doing here is I am actually changing this to the locale of where this is being displayed in the browser for the person. So this was actually done originally to have a sessions list for last year's developer week, and it allowed the time to be displayed in your local time wherever you happen to be in a custom pod inside of Connect, which is what you're in right now. Haha, reusing code to be efficient. Yes, my boss is here. Note that I said that. Yeah, so that throws that out, and then on the screen, what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. We've got our sessions, we've got our speakers, everything is kind of laid out. It's using CSS to align that. Cool, right? Okay, it's still in a browser though, Mark. That's cool, I guess, quotes, side eye. But what about on a phone? Bam. Oh gosh, it's not going to be able to see. Oh, there we go. That is the same page sitting on my phone and running. Yup. Now, you might say, wait, Mark, you said earlier you like didn't have all your setup stuff and it wasn't going, you know, like, do you have a developer account for Apple? Like you pay for that as an evangelist? No, I don't. This is the Monica app. Free. You log in and all of your, gosh, I wish I need to get like a sharing thing. So hold on, let me see if I can. All right. Let me, 1 second. Sorry. I'm going to show you, hopefully. So it's here in the corner. I'm going to load it. And it's going to check. That's, there we go. That's all of my projects that you saw earlier. I'm going to tap one. Come on. There we go. And it loaded the thing. So automatic updating online on your phone previews of your apps. Boom. This is why I love this product. I should be an evangelist for them. Hey, they're not paying me for this. What the heck? Now, the really big thing, and I feel like I say this a lot, but I don't think I'm saying it enough. Everything that I'm showing you here can work with literally any JavaScript framework that you've got. Oh, Anthony, yeah, you missed what I was saying. So Monica is free for limited use. Here, I have all the info on that. Oopsie. There you go. That's the cost. So it's $22 a month for 10 projects, and there is a free tier. You get 3 projects, 3 builds in 24 hours, and a slightly limited IDE. I didn't really use it very long free because I just was like, sold, I'm done. I will pay the money. That $22 a month, by the way, is not correct. It's whatever the current exchange rate is to the Japanese yen. So I actually have been paying like $12.87 a month because the US dollar to Japanese yen has been very strong. So depending where you are in the world, depending what your currency is, you too could potentially get an upgrade for that. So excuse me, I just breathed in coffee. All right, where were we? Cool. Okay, so that loads sessions.cfm, and we see that down here. Very, very cool. And as noted before, it's loading it into this particular div, which is the viewport. You can have multiple viewports using HTMX if you'd like, or you can just have one, or you can not use HTMX, whatever you want. Then what do we have up here? We've got 2 buttons, right? So earlier I said, if you have an HX, it means that it's an attribute from HTMX. So what do I have here on these buttons? Well, HTMX is smart enough to know if it's a button, then the trigger type is almost certainly going to be click. So it just defaults to that for buttons. If you want mouse over or load or something else weird, I don't know, whatever floats your boat, you could do that too. But I don't have to put a trigger here. But what I am doing is, you can see this is a verb, get, right? Other verbs, post, delete, head, right? So I am doing a get command when I click this upper button against, oh, it's sessions. It's the same thing. Well, what about this one? Schedule edit. That's a different page. What happens then? Look at that. It just went out. It went to my website in the cloud and pulled back schedule edit.cfm. Now, ignore this struct up here for a moment. This is just some demo code, also showing that this is an actual CFM page that's actually in ColdFusion and running and rendering, and I have 12 minutes left. Holy crap. Okay, I'd better hurry up. Let's take a look at this page real quick, because this is the part of the talk that is new, so I definitely want to get through this. What is schedule edit look like? Okay, so that little struct that you were seeing was a dump I did earlier just to kind of show you what the form scope had. At the very top, I do, and by the way, I know I'm doing this all in tags. If you don't like tags, I'm sorry. I'll buy you a beer sometime. I could have coded this in script, but I don't know. I was feeling taggy. So I check to see if the form submit object exists, and if there is one, then I check what the session, if there's a session ID. If there is one, then I do an update. This is CRUD code. This is just CRUD. This is basic, good old CRUD right here, right? I do an insert, and then I say new session inserted. Holy moly, this is cool. I also have an edit thing, which I don't think I'm going to get to, but same thing. That's the update of CRUD. And then on the bottom, schedule editor, all the form fields, but the most important part of the whole form field, and this is what makes all of this possible inside of this this spa. Notice the form. There's no action. That's on purpose. There's an ID because you need one. There's a name because you need one. But there's no action. There's no method. Why? We're overwriting that. We are not using the built-in any of the stuff that HTML is going to have. We're using HTMX to pass in the contents of all of this form HTML, and we are going to post it, new verb, HX post it back to itself. So think about this. Let's think about what's actually happening inside of this whole situation here. I am loading the contents of a page that were rendered on the server into a DOM object on the phone. That object then will actually pass back to the originating object and return back what comes back from that. And what's going to come back from that? Well, it's going to do the insert here. It's also going to say new session inserted, and then it's going to display the form again, blank. All right. Now this worked last night, and I swear if it doesn't work, I'm putting bourbon into my coffee and calling it a day. But let's go in here, and we're going to say, let's do speakers 711, just so we know. Now, this is one thing that this has nothing to do with HTMX or Monica or anything like this. This is just something that I need to do better here. I need a date picker that does UTC and does actual translations of local time to me to UTC. I haven't done that yet, mostly because this is not a real app that I'm selling quite yet. But I would do that there. That's why this, I have to put it in UTC, and it's super ugly. All right, active yes. So, okay, raise your hands if you think this is going to work. No, I'm raising my hand. This is going to work. All right, submit. Boom! Displayed back into the same display port, the same viewport in that div. You can still see these guys up here. These buttons are not part of the return. New session was inserted. And if I go back to sessions, here's the session, 6:03 a.m., first session 5896, speaker 711. So there you go. So that is essentially the beginnings of a CRUD app, and I'm running terribly out of time, so I'm going to start asking questions. But that is it. Who has some? Okay, actually, I'm going to start going. Okay. A asked, it takes the HTML code, CSS, and JS and rewrites to native, or is it kind of an interpreter that runs loads to load content without being JS interpreters? Yes. Basically, yes to all that. It's a combination of all those things. So there's native hooks that run as native code behind the scenes that get compiled into that. And it also uses some WebView components that use like traditional web stuff. So it is not building actual full-blown native components because there really isn't like full translation into that. How do you check app health on Monica.io? I'm not sure what you mean, like that your app is up. I mean, you're running a ColdFusion server behind the scenes. So anything that you're using to check that, Fusion Reactor, anything like that, like the app itself is probably not going to crash because it's a bunch of JavaScript and it's running. It's the backend stuff that might die. Okay. PM asks, what about interacting with device APIs, calendar, photo, GPS? What about things like in-app purchases? Are there APIs for interacting with Apple and Android services? So yes, I believe to all of that. And shoot, I don't have it up in here. Like I think I will. Oopsie daisy. Mark, what are you doing? So Apache Cordova documentation. So this is the underlying technology that is sitting underneath Monica. Anything that Cordova can do, Monica can do. And Cordova can do pretty much all of the things that you're talking about. It has all the hooks for cameras, has all the hooks for device API stuff. In fact, there's some demo code that you can pull to do like a picture sharing app, like an Instagram type of app. All of that is definitely in there. As far as like interacting with in-app purchases, I think they have those things. I just haven't ever done it. Anthony, so once I get a CFM page working, including jQuery, it'll work on phone. Sort of. Yes. Remember, the CFM page lives on the server. The database that you're running off of lives on a server somewhere. The stuff that's on the phone has to be JavaScript or jQuery or Vue, whatever, and HTML. And it's going out and pulling the data back from that endpoint, whether it's an API or in my case, whether it's a CFM page that I'm running on my server and I'm rendering on the server and returning the stuff back. Can we import our zipped PhoneGap apps in? I think so, Jeff. Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't tried doing that, but there is an import functionality, and they should all work. You might have to update a few libraries because a lot has changed since then, but for the most part, yes. So if you've got that stuff, do it and give it a try. Let me know if it works for you. We're building for Android Monica apps and APK. That APK would be distributed basically. Yeah, it's like a web view. No. Yeah. It's a web view in the background. Jay Valentina. Yeah. Sweet. So there's really no cost for end users and no cost to dev behind if you showed, even if we have thousands using our app. I looked at the pricing page and see no. Yeah. There's no. They don't charge you for like for the app, even if it becomes super popular or whatever. If you look at some of their example apps, I think Nike made an app using Monica. Like big companies use this stuff, and yeah, they don't charge you for for how popular things get. Like there's not a, oh, if you're making a bunch of money, it's no longer free type of thing. So if you manage to use the whatever 3 builds a day or 10 builds a day, or three app thing for free, and you build an app and it becomes the next $1 million thing, it's fine. I mean, I want to cut because I'm the one who got you there. No, I'm kidding. Sort of. We'll talk. So will Monica build the necessary files and help post to Apple App Store? Does that still need to be done on Mac? Yes, it will build all of the files, but you still need an account with Apple to post to their store. There's no getting around that. I think it's $100 a year. I'm sorry, you do need to do that. The Google Play Store, I think, is still free or very low cost, but you also need an account with them. So this does not get rid of all of that fun stuff. But what it does do is it builds the files. It builds everything you need into a nice little package that you can then put onto their store. I believe they even have an integration once you put all of your information into their app, like your login for your store and whatever. It can do all of the submitting so that you can get a workflow going, which is the whole point of this, to actually like update your app and push it automatically and go through a pipeline and go through a workflow. So yeah, it's rad. But you do need to pay for that feature. That's not free. Air fryer Christmas goose. Yeah, it was nice seeing you, buddy. Any concern over Monica going away someday and then all your APK won't work? Well, so if once all of this is generated and is up there, even if Monica blows up the next day, it's still fine. Like this doesn't run on Monica's servers once you pull stuff off it. So that's not going away. They seem to be doing really well. I have been watching them, and they keep upgrading things. They keep updating things, and their online IDE is freaking sweet. Like, I mean, it's almost as good as VS Code in my opinion. So I don't think they're going to go away. We currently use Go Native. Oh, I saw Go Native IO. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't try that. That's oof. Cool. What kind of plugins do they provide with their paid account? I don't know that question. I don't know that answer. I am not actually sure. I have not delved quite that deep because most of the stuff that I build, I don't actually like have all that much like usefulness, but explore it. And again, think whatever is working in Cordova will work in this. And they seem to be pretty responsive too, so you can email them as well. Cool. Will the CFC work in here too? Yes, right. So what you saw me doing was I was literally generating a page on my server, and making this show up. In fact, here's something fun. If I go to this page and I just open up a browser, it loads. Yeah. So this stuff is just it's just out there. It's loading. It's live. That's a CFM. Now, if this was a CFC that returned a JSON, what would you see on the screen? JSON. Same thing, right? I mean, obviously and by the way, this stuff, all my stuff is totally open. I have course turned completely off because I was having issues with it. You do want to secure it better than I have. Full disclosure. Yeah, it's like a Postman on steroids. Basically, it's a post. Yeah, I mean, this is like a Postman that you can then throw live, which is pretty cool. Okay. Since you work closely with Adobe, maybe you can pass on. Lots of developers are hoping CF tags can soon be used to build business apps, basically just user interfaces not needed for gameplay. So there would be a player that runs as an APK on Android, and CF tags would build the interface and use a local database, all just on the phone. No need for a cloud backend, for example, for a to-do list app for starters. That's interesting and not really a question, but the issue there is that I can pretty much guarantee ColdFusion will never run on a phone. Full stop, drop mic. That's not going to happen. It could theoretically, and I'm sure some wild-eyed, developer, probably Brad Wood, has gotten CF or Lucy or something running on an Android phone because it does run Java. That's just not. It's not going to happen on iOS. Plus, you don't want it to. CF has a fairly large overhead. You really want that running on a big old burly server somewhere. Just passing you the data would not be really super efficient to run it on a phone necessarily. So I don't know that that would be the best thing to run this at. Now, having said that, we are trying to ease the user interface design portion of using ColdFusion to design business apps, like internal apps. And we are doing that for desktop for the most part. But I don't really see why that couldn't work in a phone as well. Like you should be able just to take all of the front end code that runs and plugs into these APIs and run it on a Monica app and have it running that way. But it would still have to go somewhere for the database and for the server. A lot of databases are terabytes. Like they have really huge loads and backends and memory, memory footprints. Your phone, I mean, it is a little computer in your pocket, but it's still not quite there. But maybe it'll get there. Who knows? Maybe that's the future. Is our phones will just all kind of run either in the cloud or not in the cloud, and we won't know and we won't care. And then maybe something like that would happen and would work. But yeah. Great tool for native apps on the go. If you already have an API, will be a beautiful thing. Thank you. Yep. What is your preferred CFM IDE? I use VS Code. I use the VS Code with the Adobe plugin for VS Code, the Adobe CF Builder plugin, which is what you saw right here. You see, got CF right there. Got my Monica IO demo here. Yeah, so that's what I use. Offline entry earlier. How is that stored? Where is it loaded into the DB? So that's a little out of scope for what I'm showing today, but essentially what you do, there's a variety of different like local DB, like browser-based DBs that can run on a phone, and you need to like do detection, figure out what phone you're on, and then like pass your data into that. I think they run as like document databases. I don't think they're all SQL. There might be like one or two, like SQLite, I think, is a SQL relational one. And what you would have to do is create a system that like checks to see if you're online or offline, which is a hook that you can check, which is cool. And then if you're offline, it would go to the local to get that data and write to the local. Once you're back online, it would then have to figure out what changes need to be like synced between everything. So it's a little more complicated, but totally doable. Can Monica utilize deep links? That is, when on phone, clicking a link for a web page that will cause the device to know to open the app rather than your website. That's a really good question, PM. I think so. I think there, because it's just running in essentially a web view inside of a browser. I know that there are certain ways to make those pop up, like the little, download this icon and not 100%. I haven't done that. But anyway, cool. Well, I'm over time. Apologies for going a little bit late, but I hope it was worth seeing some CRUD action going on, because I think it really shows the capabilities of the framework and kind of opens it up for people to use in their day-to-day development. You can build mobile apps. You can do it. You don't have to learn some weird new language or whatever. You have all the tools necessary to do it today. And by the way, for folks that are like, oh, I don't know, Japan, I'm paying in yen, my budgetary people are going to freak out. It's a little bit harder, but you can, the Cordova that underlies all of this is Apache. It's open source. It's free. If you want to kind of do all of this and you're willing to take maybe a few weeks to learn the underlying tech, you can do a lot of this stuff without the Monica IO layer. They just make it easier. You would have to build things. You might need a Mac to build. Like there's all these difficulties that come out of it, but it's not impossible to do this stuff locally for yourself with Cordova as well. Monica IO just makes it super seamless. They remove barriers. They remove friction. Right on. Well, thank you all so much for coming to my talk. It's been an absolute pleasure. Great questions. Oh wait, I might have another question. Do you use HTMX? But this could be Vue. Yes. Sorry, Steve. So Steve asked, could this be Vue, jQuery, Bootstrap, anything else? Yes. Any JavaScript. It could be anything. How do you send a preview to the customer? That's a little bit difficult. So there are ways to, in the App Store, to create like a non-sellable version, and then you need like a little code for their. It kind of sucks. It's kind of difficult. Probably what you'd want to do is just kind of like go and show them it running in the Monica app on your phone. Sweet. All right. Awesome, Jossum. Well, everyone have a fabulous, wonderful winter holiday season. Go eat too much and drink in moderation, but still to your satisfaction, and have fun and relax and stay warm because it is stupidly cold everywhere in the world right now. And go hang out with your family. Let me put my contact information up here real quick. This is all my contact info. Feel free to reach out anytime. Takata@adobe.com is my email. It's totally open. You can do that anytime. My Twitter is @MarkTakata. For the moment, I'm still on Twitter. My GitHub is there, and this code should be up there already. If not, I'll be adding it to it. My LinkedIn, please feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you would like. I'm on the CFML Slack channel as Mark Takata at Adobe. Mostly I hang out in the Adobe channel. And if you would like to hang out with me for 15 to 30 minutes at some point in the future, you can hop onto Calendly and request an office hour with me on there. I don't think it's Monday through Friday anymore. I think it's just Mondays or something like that, or Fridays. I don't know. It's a day, whatever. Or you can email me and I can schedule something. It's cool. I'm cool. I'm easy like that. I am flexible. Right on. Well, I'm going to stop